Thank you so much for being a part of our study. We're in Isaiah chapter 52, and we're beginning the intro to the big passage, the suffering servant passage. And so let's read it. See, my servant shall prosper, he shall be exalted and lifted up, and shall be very high. Just as there were many who were astonished at him, so marred was his appearance beyond human semblance, and his form beyond that of mortals. So he shall startle many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths because of him, for that which had not been told them they shall see, and that which they had not heard they shall contemplate. Let's stop there. That's the end of chapter 52. We may get into 53. We'll spend a lot of time the next time we get together with 53. Rudy, why don't you get started with the servant of the Lord and the suffering servant?
I remember doing a word search on this, and it had to do with startle. And in Hebrew, actually, what it's talking about is taking cold water on your fingertips and throwing it in somebody's face. And when you do that to yourself or somebody does that to you, you become speechless for a moment.
Right. Right.
And that's actually the picture that's going on here. Just as there were many who were astonished at him, so marred was his appearance beyond human semblance, and his form beyond that of mortals. He shall startle many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths. They shut their mouths from it going, oh, he was the King of Kings. And basically, when they realized their own misinformation, they actually become silent, because what other response could you have when you see that you made that big of a mistake?
Right. So I am not a great expert on ancient literature. The Bible has been my book and books about the Bible. But I've read enough to know that the Bible is unique. Ancient literature does not treat its heroes like we read in the Bible.
No.
And so to have the King of all kings, the Lord of all lords, the one to whom we will bow our knee and say, you are Lord, to have him in this picture is, if it weren't true, it wouldn't be written like this. He would be written differently. He would be pictured with the great might and the power and blah, 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 okay? And so they are startled. Let's dig in more to the picture. And I'm going to turn a lot to Rudy. Rudy's written a book on this subject, so I'm going to turn a lot to Rudy. And I've got my whiteboard here to make some notes if we need to. So let's look at it. Who has believed what we've heard? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a young plant, like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him. Nothing at his appearance should we desire him. He was despised and rejected by others, a man of suffering, acquainted with infirmity, and as one from whom others hide their faces. He was despised, and we held him of no account. We're going to stop there. We may go back over this some more the next time we get together. But Rudy, why don't you get us started thinking about the suffering servant?
Well, when I read prophecy, when I read it, from a Jewish perspective, I always wondered how Christianity came up with the idea that Jesus died for their sin. Because really, my whole life, my first 40 years, I was waiting for God to come back in majesty and straighten the world out,
right,
so to speak. But the plan is that he was going to die for our sins and be raised from the dead, and that showed that his death was acceptable.
Right.
Acceptable for what? Acceptable to bring the law to its fullness, not to bring it to its end, but to bring it to what that looks like in all of the fullness that he had given for us to believe in. And it goes all the way back to the flood, really it goes back even further than that, because Moses is told that Abel's blood cries out.
Right.
That's the first mention of blood. And then in the ark, after they finally get to dry ground, Noah is told that now they can eat animals. One of the reasons that they could eat animals now is because all the vegetation had been destroyed. But God told Noah, don't eat blood, eat the animals with the blood. And God tells him why. He tells him that there's life in the blood. And then in Leviticus, 1,500 years later, Moses is told that I've given you blood, there is life in the blood, and I've given it to you to put on the altar to make atonement for your souls. And atonement is a word that corresponds to the greatest promise of the Bible, that we would be one with Jesus as he is one with the Father. So when you look at the word atonement, when you break it apart into its syllables, at one, this blood, God was building the case for this fluid called blood, that it was going to do something that makes atonement. We actually don't see this until we understand that Jesus died for our sins, and it's his blood that was put on the altar in heaven forever. The thing is, it's in heaven forever. Therefore, we're always under grace, even in a resurrected body.
Right, let me summarize real quick. Made some notes. So, the suffering servant has to do with bringing the law to its fullness. I hope I spelled that correctly. Bring the law to its fullness. Not spell check on my whiteboard. It involves blood. So we start off with Abel, where his blood cried out from the ground about the fact that he had been murdered by his brother. And then Noah was told he could eat flesh, he could eat meat, except he could not eat the blood because life is in the blood, correct?
Right.
And then we come to Moses, and Moses is given the sacrificial system, which again, it is a picture of shedding blood for our sins. All right, and now we come to the atonement with Jesus at 1 minute. We can be brought into a relationship with God through what Jesus did for us on the cross. That's called the atonement. He shed his blood. You want to add something to that?
Well, the thing is, God is faithful. God is all-knowing. God never does anything without a purpose. This is just one of those many details that when they're pulled together, all accentuate the same picture.
Right.
The whole thing was about blood from the beginning.
Right.
And who could have done that?
Right.
But the Lord.
Right. So when I think about a little summary statement, Rufus